All right. Welcome to Fantasy Fire and Ice, brought to you by Sportstopia. Week 3 almost in the books, and maybe right now you have some bad blood with your fantasy team. Maybe you would wish you could go back to December when you were still thinking about the upcoming season and trying to identify all your anti-heroes, or maybe you're just happy it's fall and you want to grab your cardigan, or maybe you're just sick of hearing Taylor Swift is now dating Travis Kelce and involved in the NFL. Well, don't you worry. I have plenty more Taylor Swift puns coming up. And my only question is, I invited her to be a part of this show. Why aren't there any pictures of her hanging out with my mom? Like, I mean, her hanging out with Mrs. Kelce. That's the biggest news of the weekend. I don't think so. There's a lot bigger news than that going on in our NFL worlds and our fantasy worlds. So before we look forward to the 2 remaining games tonight, of course we have to look back and see what we got right and what we might have gotten wrong about this fantasy week 3. So let's start with, you might have heard that there's a team from Miami that scored a bunch of points. So our man Chris was thinking about the Dolphins going into the weekend, and he actually had his doubts. How do you think this prediction played out?
Something about that Miami offense that scares me. Now, look, I want Tyreek Hill. I want Jalen Waddle. I want those guys. I'm not in love with the running back situation there. As fast as Mostert is, and in fact, we have seen production from him, I do worry a little bit about how that may become more of a committee than type of thing.
There's something about that offense that scares you? Yes, I think it's that they're the best offense in the NFL. Chris, not the weekend to pick against those Miami running backs. Raheem Mostert, he did pretty good, 4 touchdowns, 142 total yards. But there was a guy who did better, Devon Achane. He had over 200 yards on the ground. He chipped in his own 4 touchdowns. So while Chris might not have been too confident about them this weekend, they must have heard them and said, we're out for bad blood this time. That was another Taylor Swift pun right there. All right, so what was the other big offensive performance from the weekend? We expected a lot of points for those Chargers and the Vikings. Well, our man Steezy, he really liked those Chargers this past weekend. Take a listen.
Chargers stacked, man. And what's projected to be arguably the highest scoring game of the week. I haven't verified that, by the way. I'm kind of just going off of projections and whatnot. But Chargers, Vikings, I expect a combined total of at least 60 points. And y'all know me by now, but whenever there's a game that's supposed to be a high shooting game, I want those players. And so I don't know if it's Austin Eckler or Josh Kelly at running back, but let me go with 3 Chargers as well. Justin Herbert, who's yet to turn the ball over this season. Keenan Allen, who's been on an absolute tear, even at his advanced age. I mean, still balling out, still doing his thing. And whether or not it's Austin Eckler or Josh Kelly, I know Josh Kelly had a disappointing week 2, but I mean, we saw what he did in week 1, and so we know what he's capable of.
I just love when we call professional football players an advanced age. We just say, oh, here comes the oldest player in the league. He might as well have a walker and a cane, and he's like 31 years old. That's what we're seeing with Keenan Allen. He's just getting 200 yards every game. He's gobbling up 20 targets. He even threw a touchdown, so hopefully you had him in your fantasy lineups, your DFS lineups. Justin Herbert looked good. Kellen Moore looks like he's got it rolling as the offensive coordinator there. Herbert added 3 touchdowns. The only problem that Steezy had there, and that we all might have, is the Eckler-Kelly problem. Eckler didn't play. Kelly didn't do anything again. He might actually stink, even though I used a lot of fab money on him. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Good job, Steezy. All right, well, there was another game. It wasn't yesterday on Sunday. It was from Thursday. And the Giants are in trouble. They did not do well with San Francisco, but we at least had one prediction about Daniel Jones that we were hoping would come true. Tell me if it did.
Running back that you're going to trust for the New York Giants is Daniel Jones. And that's ultimately it. Daniel Jones rushing is probably going to be at some of the all-time highest on Thursday night because they don't have another option to go to, and it's a short week and they're trying to figure it out. I don't expect much from the running back room. I'm not looking to bring anybody in for a game against the San Francisco 49ers on the road. Definitely not looking to do that. If you think that, you're looking for a prop or anything, bet Daniel Jones rushing yards is easy play here. He's probably going to run the ball close to 20 times.
Has Daniel Jones' previous all-time high been 4 yards? Did he run it 20 times? Because he only ran for 5 yards. Now look, you're going to say, Matt, the 49ers defense is pretty good. Yeah, I get that. The only problem was I thought Daniel Jones would be running for his life north, not south, not getting sacked. I thought he was going to be running away from the defenders and not right into them. Look, we all whiffed on that one, and maybe some of us even thought Daniel Jones was good enough to be a weekly fantasy starting quarterback. But besides week 2, where he lit up the Cardinals, he's put up a 5-point game and then a 5-point game in your season-long fantasy lineups. So maybe Thursday wasn't his night. Maybe there are better days ahead, but maybe it's also trouble for Big Blue. Speaking of trouble, some other mobile quarterbacks that maybe you had higher hopes for than they're giving out right now. One of them's in Chicago. One of them's in Denver. I'm talking about Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. So which one would you rather have? That question was posed to our guys last week. Take a listen.
Who was a bigger hold your nose play? Fields or Russell Wilson?
Oh, yeah, you really held that one to me.
Sorry.
Probably more. I guess probably Russ, just because the legs are so much there with Fields. And
True.
you could take what he said in those couple pressers in a couple different directions. One, you can say, all right, well, we're going to see last year's Fields again. They are 0-12 in the last 12. So last year's Fields was literally just hero ball, which is exactly what he mentioned in his pressers. He's like, it was really weird to really decipher what people brought. They're like, oh, he's blaming the coaches. But if you listen to that interview back a couple times, you realize within that entire conversation, he's like, yeah, it's, during the week I'm working on defenses and scripts and et cetera. But he goes, but once I get on the field, I just want to empty my brain and just go play ball. And I'm just like, wait. So you're actually studying during the week, learning the defenses, but then on the field, you want to just empty your brain? Johnny Manziel at least said, I'm not going to study at all during the week. I'm just going to go out there and play my game. So I don't know. I kind of wrote off Justin Fields on my show on Monday, my top 10 thoughts show. He is my number one thought. I said, I'm done. Justin Fields is done.
You know what I love doing? I love studying. I love studying hard. I love cramming all night. And then when I actually get to the point where I need to apply the things I studied for, I love completely forgetting it and then not doing it at all. That's basically what we're seeing from Justin Fields. Cody nailed that one. That was a hold your nose pick him, but Justin Fields treated everybody to 99 yards through the air and a touchdown and another 47 yards rushing against the Chiefs, that blowout win. Maybe he got scared that Taylor Swift was in attendance. We don't know. I mean, I'll give him a pass. Cody nailed that one. If you have the other one was either Russell Wilson. At least Russ is passing the ball, even though the Broncos lost by 50 points. I guess you could say they were all garbage time passes and yards he was racking up. But at least he's getting you that if you have him. Cody, out on Justin Fields. I think we're going to be talking to him a little bit more about that as we get into the show. But before we get to that, I just do want to say the name of the game in fantasy is to win, right? We all want to win. Some of us would like to win money. Well, our fearless leader is actually doing just that. Let's highlight one of the Millie Maker winners from last week. Take a listen.
Great to have the man in the building, you know what I'm saying? Especially after a big night now. There was a Millie Maker that went down last night, Thursday Night Football, Giants and the San Francisco 49ers. You were a part of a group of gentlemen that won that hit that big one, correct? Congratulations, sir.
Yeah, thank you. It was I want to say it was fun and exciting, but I have a rule. When I'm watching the game, I kind of remember who I put in, and I don't try to look at, and watch, because it's a showdown and everything's condensed, and one play is going to going to shift. So I had Ronnie Bell.
And that was a good call. He helped. Our Sportstopia contrarian optimizer helped Daryl come up with that lineup. Now here's my favorite thing about that whole thing. I'd like to say it was fun and exciting. The man just shared the top prize in the Millie Maker. He didn't get the Millie. He got 10 grand. Now, when I get 10 grand, if it ever happens, I would say it is fun and exciting. Our guy, Daryl Snyder, our fearless leader, used to winning, and he's going to be winning a lot more. Hopefully, we all are. All right, so that was a little bit of the recap. Let's bring in the smarter guys now. Joining me again this week is Cody Carpentier. You saw some of his predictions from last week. Cody, welcome back.
How we doing, brother? I appreciate it. Yeah, pretty decent week. Not too bad.
Not too bad. Just nailed a couple predictions. Also saw some of your rankings. Not too bad. Yeah. All right. Well, joining us, we'll get into Cody's modesty in a second. Okay. And joining us again, Mark Garcia, Mr. High Low. Mark, welcome back.
What's going on, gentlemen? Back in the office and back ready for some business, man. Let's go.
For those of you who don't know, Mark was flooded out of his office last week. I guess the highs and lows of parenting. We'll call
got him.
Yeah, we got him.
I love it.
All right. But you were broadcasting from a closet last week, so that a little better background. All right, gentlemen, let's jump right into it. And I think we all know where we're going to start. Taylor Swift's outfit. What do you guys? That's the last time. Let's start here. 70 points. 70 points in an NFL game. This isn't Alabama versus Alcorn State in college football, okay? These are two, from what I've been told, two professional football teams. I don't know if they're playing professional defense out in Colorado, but these are two professional football teams. 10 touchdowns for the Dolphins. I don't know where to start. I guess we have to start with the ground game. And I'm sure Mostert was in some lineups. I don't think anybody was expecting this from A-Chain. But what do we make of this? I mean, I think both of these guys, and Cody, we'll start with you. I think both of these guys you can put in whatever lineup you have. Now, they're not always going to do this, but that offense can support both of these guys. What do you think?
I'm gonna own an L really quickly, and this is gonna come from the rookie prospecting type of season. This is really what I'm best at, I would say, is going through the NFL draft, talking about prospects and stuff. And one of the reasons I was out on Devon A-Chain, again, the talent is apparent, the speed is apparent. It's literally he holds two of the top 6 fastest plays this season as a ball carrier. Was that I didn't think that Devon A-Chain was going to be able to stay healthy for the long stretch, taking on 20 plus carries every single week. Now, going to Miami and having a healthy Raheem Mostert and being able to pair these guys together is one of the things I talked about was Chris Johnson, right? Chris Johnson, you go back and look at the stat lines for Chris Johnson. He had 350
CJ2K.
Ridiculous. 350 carries that one year. And like, that's a player that people compared A-Chain to the process. Like, listen. I get the speed, I get the talent, but as far as this realm of football and fantasy football, like there's no way A-Chain is going to be able to take the workload that Chris Johnson had. He don't need to. They literally can combine A-Chain and Mostert and get two guys for one. These guys combined for 31 carries and 285 yards rushing and 5 rushing touchdowns. We ain't even talking about the receiving work. It's amazing, really, the ability to I know it was a one-off game. They scored 70. They're not going to score 70 every week, but their ability to use both guys and keep them fresh and efficient throughout the entire game was just remarkable. I would love to see them see if they can do this, week after week after week going down the season. And they didn't even have Jalen Waddle in this game. It's definitely a blip, and I'll take the L during the scouting process on A-Chain. I just didn't think that we were going to be able to see him do this for an extended amount of time. This is the way he bent the edge. There was even a touchdown call that got called back on a hold where he bent the edge and went 45 yards with ease. It was a remarkable game for A-Chain. And I, like you mentioned, I don't think anybody had both these guys in their lineups. I did in a couple of best ball. I think that's going to be the only place you're going to see anybody have Mostert and A-Chain is in a couple of best ball drafts, but great game by both of these backs.
Mark, are you putting A-Chain in lineups going forward and feeling good about it?
Yeah, I think you have to. And something that Cody mentioned was his top end speed and the fact that he has 2 of the 6 fastest overall clock speeds this season. The other 4 are also Miami Dolphins. It's like 2 of them are Tyreek Hill, 2 of them are Raheem Mostert, and 2 of them are Devon Achane. So that in and of itself, I mean, that clearly shows us what Mike McDaniel was trying to build here. And opposing defenses simply cannot contain that amount of speed all on the field together. And then you think about Jalen Waddle, he's no slouch. He's a pretty fast guy as well. So this offense is fun. It's going to continue to be fun. And yeah, if you got one of these 4 primary contributors, you just start them, man.
If Cody's owning L's, I'll own an L too. In a dynasty league, I have Mostert. After his surgeries in San Francisco, I don't know how anybody could be like, yeah, he'll come back even better. Mark, you just mentioned it. He's one of the other 2 fastest in the league this year. After was it knee surgeries? I mean, like this guy is, and he's one of those advanced age type runners, a geriatric running back, if we're really talking about it in the league. So he's defying logic. Cody, I'll go back to you about Mostert. I mean, am I crazy in thinking we're talking top 10 running back this year for fantasy purposes?
It's that's the thing, is it's so tough to talk about it in that context, because like I mentioned with Achane, like the reason I was kind of out or pretty much completely out on Achane as far as a fantasy prospect was due to the inability to get a workload large enough to give you output consistently every single week, right? Like, you know what you're going to get out of McCaffrey, and that level of guy. I know McCaffrey's kind of on a different tier, but that level of expectation for the Barkleys, the Camaras, all that stuff. To think about Mostert in that context, or H in that context of like knowing you're going to get 18 to 24 touches a week, they're not going to score 70 every week, right? They're not going to score 3 touchdowns every single week. So it's tough for me, especially with both of these guys being healthy in this backfield, to really say, yes, top 10 guy. For me, I just can't not top 10.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe I'm a little high on the Mostert supply, but that's okay. I said I did have him in Dynasty, and look how smart I look right now. Mark, I don't mean to beat the dead horse about the 70 points or anything like that, but sometimes fantasy comes down to situation, right? And what I'm reminded of, remember the Patriots team that only had the 1 loss? I mean, they couldn't set point spreads high enough. They couldn't set totals high enough. Tom Brady, Randy Moss. I'm not saying that that's what we're seeing or anything like that. But Mike McDaniel at least doesn't seem like a guy who's going to take the foot off the gas as long as his guys are healthy. Is that something as a fantasy owner you look at and you're like, okay, well, even if it's a blowout, I still have a chance in the 4th quarter to rack up more points?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and so that's a nuanced discussion, right? Because there were reports that came out this morning that some of the NFL owners were outspoken about the fact that they ran up the score. It's like, what do you want them to do? You want them to take kneels for the entire 4th quarter? Like, they took over after a fumble from the 8-yard line. The next play was a touchdown. They had, from a backup quarterback to a backup wide receiver, they had a 60-plus yard touchdown. They had, and then Devon Achane's final touchdown run was a long one as well in the 4th quarter. But it's like, what do you want? You want them to stop playing football? Like, no, that's on you, Broncos. This is not a Mike McDaniel is bad for the game type stuff that's being thrown around. But no, yes. To answer that question, like, yeah, we target offenses and teams and situations where we can expect them to kind of keep their foot on the gas. While the Philadelphia Eagles are extremely valuable, they have shown tendencies in the past to kind of take their foot off the gas in the 4th quarter in games that they're controlling. Compare that to this kind of killer mentality of Mike McDaniel or a Josh Allen in Buffalo, where we can expect these teams to continue to treat offensive possessions as if they're opportunities to continue to improve their offense. These are teams that have Super Bowl aspirations. So it makes sense that they are kind of taking this knife in teeth mentality, trying to improve with each possession instead of saying, we're going to kind of take it easier on our guys. Yes, that's a delicate balancing act between like exposing your guys to injury versus getting better. But yeah, that is a significant factor moving forward, is finding those spots where we can expect them to continue to operate a functional offense.
To put a bow on the Dolphins, I did read the narrative standpoint for Mike McDaniel, former ball boy, I guess, in Denver. Didn't get an interview for their head coaching job. Maybe a little revenge play there. Or maybe he was just tired of people questioning if he was a good coach after last year when, Tua got knocked out of his system. I remember reading last year, is McDaniel on the hot seat because they can't win without Tua? Well, you see a fully healthy Dolphins offense, and it's not a stretch to say this is the best offense in the league. And they didn't have Jalen Waddle, which for Jalen Waddle owners, that sucks because they scored 70 points. You think maybe he could have done something because the Broncos didn't seem to I think they only dressed 11 players on offense and didn't bother with the defense yesterday. Mark, you brought up a good point, though, about exposing players to injury, which brings me to the next team that also scored a bunch of points yesterday. The Kansas City Chiefs. We'll get to their offensive performance, but we did see at one point Mahomes, in what was already becoming a laugher, he got rolled up on. I mean, that's just, you can't really plan for that. You can't really game plan for that. But that is one of the risks. I've seen reports that Mahomes looks okay. He always looks like he's walking with a limp. Do you think they should have pulled their starters earlier, Mark? Or were you, is that just, that's how football goes?
I don't think so. This is still a team that is very much trying to work through what they want their offense to be. You look at their wide receiver snaps, for example. They're still trying to figure stuff out in Kansas City. So an opponent where we can kind of just not beat around the bush. They're the worst defense in the league right now in the Chicago Bears, a highly dysfunctional team right now. In that situation, I would expect them to want to continue exploring what is working, what is not. They're still trying to figure out kind of who's going to be playing this gadgety schemed usage type role. We saw that last year with Mecole Hardman. He got hurt. They transitioned that kind of role to Jerick McKinnon. And it was, again, Jerick McKinnon that kind of stepped into that role, particularly in the red zone for week 3. He had those 2 touchdown catches. And it kind of was reminiscent of when he took on that role midway through the season last year after Mecole Hardman got hurt. So, yeah, I would expect this team to continue to move around pieces because a team with Super Bowl aspirations, they want to win another championship, and they have the pieces to do so. So the fact that it's going to happen every now and then, you're going to see guys get hurt, but this team is trying to figure things out right now, and they need the repetitions to do that. Because Patrick Mahomes played all of one offensive drive in the preseason. Travis Kelce was out in week 1. He didn't play a full snap rate in week 2. So they're still trying to see what's going to work and how to move forward with this team.
Cody, I'm always looking to say that somebody's back. Oh, who's back? The Chiefs are back. I don't think they ever left, but they're back. I know they're back now. Mahomes did look good before. He looked good in general. 3 touchdowns. But my question to you is, though, from a fantasy perspective, I think once again, and look, Travis Kelce had a touchdown, but it's not like he lit the world on fire. He had 69 yards. Feel free, make a joke. He had 69 yards and a touchdown. But it's not like it was a 150-yard Travis Kelce game. It wasn't like a 15-catch Travis Kelce game. So when you look around at the Chiefs offense, and I feel like we've talked about this for a few weeks now, who else are we targeting? It's not like Pacheco had a bad game. I saw McKinnon, he had a couple of touchdowns. But aside from Mahomes, who else are we targeting?
Target what you want. Like Pacheco was a good play yesterday because the defensive matchup was nice against Chicago. But again, Clyde Edwards-Helaire came in and got 15 carries as well in the same game. Pacheco was questionable going into the game. I think it was a game time decision, but he obviously ended up playing. Rashee Rice showed a little bit in week 1, not much last week, and then comes back and gets 7 targets in this game. I love Sky Moore. I think a lot of the fantasy community likes Sky Moore, but Sky Moore just is like, is it gonna pop? Is it gonna come? It seems like another one of those guys. Every single year, there's 1 or 2 of them where we're like, this is the year, and it just doesn't happen. And Sky Moore feels like he's happening again in that same situation. Justin Watson, another one that he's a consummate pro. He's gonna get the targets every week because he's dependable. And you see that deep downfield throw, like 35, 40 yards downfield, that Mahomes just puts right on him and he catches it every single time. So he ends up with a stupid stat line of 2 catches for 51 yards. It's like, what are you going to do with that in fantasy? You really can't do anything. And then you have McKinnon over here catching 2 touchdowns. So as well as getting 2 carries. I just think they're going to keep spreading the ball around to everybody. There's opportunities for Valdez-Scantling. He got 2 deep balls. I think one was called back. Like outside of Kelsey, really, who can you trust? Maybe Pacheco. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now with the whole offense.
And so when you say something like that, though, I mean, some of these guys that you mentioned, though, they're going to be more DFS assets rather than your season long. Is that the way we're looking?
Sure, but like even then, I think Mark could attest to this. He plays a little more DFS than I do, but I think like, what are you going to do? Like if you can fit McKinnon in there at value, of course you're probably going to do that if the matchup is right. But when you see a consistent stat line from like a Valdez-Scantling where he's going to get these sole opportunities, boring. Like that's not going to help you win unless he's getting 6-7 targets and 3 of them are for 50-yard deep balls. Like that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a big pop. Watson's not going to win you anything. Rashee Rice, if the targets continue to grow, there's potential there, but I just don't see it really as far as upside goes with any of these guys.
Are we for the Chiefs here, Mark? Are we going to see? I mean, because a lot of people took Kelsey in the first round of some of their drafts. Are we going to see that guy emerge eventually, or is Kelsey still going to be very good? Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's probably good for a touchdown a game, right? I mean, like I'm never going to bet against that. As a matter of fact, I didn't, but I'm never going to do that. So, are we going to see that old Kelsey emerge, or is this an age thing, or did we just, is it just the natural progression of the offense where they're just, defenses are keying on Kelsey now?
No, it's probably the former. He missed game 1, and in game 2, week 2, his first game of the NFL season, he played 64% of the offensive snaps. He only played 61% of the offensive snaps last week because of the blowout. So he's eventually going to work his way back up to 95% snap rate. He's going to be on the field. He's going to be running routes at one of the highest rates at the tight end position. So this is a guy that's going to be fine. Back to that like discussion about the who's valuable in this offense and what can we expect. It's basically Travis Kelce, a bunch of other guys, and then that schemed short area usage role. And what kind of stuck out to me is like Kadarius Toney has been operating in that over the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. I mean, he's not playing heavy snap rate, but he has a 35% targets per route run rate. So they're clearly utilizing him in that schemed usage short area role. He only played 3% of the offensive snaps in this past game. So he only played 2 offensive snaps. And that was the game where Jerick McKinnon stepped into and scored 2 touchdowns. So are we seeing something similar to what happened last year when Jerick McKinnon took over that schemed usage role? Once McCole Hardman got hurt, are they done with Kadarius Toney? Was it simply a case of he was working his way back from injury and he was active because they already had Richie James inactive? I don't know. But if that's one of the fantasy relevant pieces of this offense is who is seeing that schemed usage role. And we can say Jerick McKinnon is never going to continue to just like have these 6-game stretches where he scores multiple touchdowns every week. Well, it's like in that role, he could. So that is something to continue to monitor. And I think week 4 is going to be extremely telling in that equation, in the sense, does Kadarius Toney come back and see that usage that he was seeing in the first 2 weeks? Or does Jerick McKinnon kind of just continue in as he did in the second half of last year?
Well, I think outside of Mahomes, this is just another case of the Chiefs, Taylor's version, being an unknown for the other fantasy players, something all of us fantasy owners know all too well. 10-minute version. There we go. All right, guys, you guys aren't Swifties. You got to play along with me here, okay? You got to play along with me here. All right. Before we get to the next topic, I do want to we got a question, got a trade question here in the chat. Should I trade Josh Jacobs? And this is from Reflex Smoke 843. Should I trade Josh Jacobs and Cortland Sutton for CeeDee Lamb? I have Travis Etienne, Saquon, Kupp, Pittman, D-Hop, and DJ Moore. This person is playing apparently in a 2-person league if he has all right, so I know which side of the trade I'm on. Should I trade Josh Jacobs and Cortland Sutton for CeeDee Lamb? I have Travis Etienne, Saquon, Kupp, Pittman. All right. My first thought is I don't like what I'm seeing from Josh Jacobs at all. I don't like what I'm seeing from the Raiders. I don't like the usage. I don't like any of that. Sutton has shown some flashes in the first 2 weeks, but I'm willing to bet more on Dak and CD figuring it out than Sutton to keep up that pace. So I would personally take the trade, but what would you guys do?
Yeah, I'm 100% in line with taking this trade. His team's in a little bit of a spot with Saquon out and Kupp still working to come back. I would lean Lamb obviously over Sutton, and Jacobs is averaging 2.4 yards per carry right now. I don't see the role growing exponentially over the course of the season. I think when Jacoby Myers is on the field with Devontae Adams, they have to continue to target both of those guys as the majority, and getting the run game going. Just after last night, it's continually just doesn't look like it's going to happen like it did last year. I would move off Jacobs, move off Sutton. I want Denver to trade Sutton, but that's here nor there. CeeDee Lamb, though, giving you some juice at the wide receiver position with Hopkins, being questionable every week. DJ Moore not getting the alpha opportunity you want to see from a Justin Fields, and then Kupp obviously missing time. You need that juice from Lamb, and then you take that roster spot and go add a running back in free agency.
Maybe you spend all of your fab money on A-Chain.
If he's there. If he's there.
Yeah. Mark, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a little bit closer than we were initially leading on. Josh Jacobs is a guy, obviously, he was training on his own and as far as staying in game shape, but you're not really in game shape until you're playing games. So he's a guy who's probably going to be coming along a lot stronger once the season progresses. And he's a guy who's still seeing some of the highest usage at the running back position of any other back. I mean, you look at his backfield opportunity share from last night, and he was seeing 95% of the running back opportunities in this backfield. So there's a lot going on here, I think, from a digging a little bit deeper perspective. We have Josh McDaniels, who now has new offensive personnel. We know it's still an extremely concentrated offense. I mean, you have two guys in Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers who are seeing 72% of the available targets in this offense. And you go back to last year, it was basically Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs were trading 30-point fantasy games throughout the bulk of the fantasy season and then into the fantasy playoffs. So I think this is a little closer than initial gut reactions based on the recency, what we've seen recently out of Josh Jacobs. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about CeeDee Lamb. He's a top 12 wide receiver week in and week out, playing for the Dallas Cowboys. And it's hard, or it should be fairly interesting to pair that profile with Cooper Kupp when he comes back.
Yeah, so and that was going to be my last point on this. This is a little bit of a gamble, right? I mean, obviously you're hoping Kupp comes back and does Cooper Kupp things, but I guess my main reasoning is when I look at this, I'm out on DJ Moore and I'm out on Hopkins. I don't trust them to win me many weeks where I think CeeDee Lamb might have that potential. And I look, I have confidence that Jacobs can figure it out, but the complete regression in yards per carry, cutting it in half so far, does concern me a little bit. But this is more when I look at this, I'm just not – my DJ Moore, my seemingly endless DJ Moore experiment is over. I just he has the potential, but it just never comes together for me, and especially in that Chicago offense. So that's where I'm leaning. Hope that answers your question, Reflex Smoke. I think we'd all take the trade, but obviously you got to add a running back because Saquon's health is a little up in the air. All right, look, I'm going to put this bluntly on our next topic. Do the Jaguars stink? I mean, yep. Are they? But they shouldn't, though. They shouldn't. Every metric. No. Everything on paper looks like they shouldn't. It looks like Trevor Lawrence should have taken a bigger leap or was taking a bigger leap. They got the coach there. I just don't want to believe they stink, but Cody, they stink, huh?
They should have lost week one. I talked about that one on my top 10 thoughts show after week one. Is they should have lost that game to the Indianapolis Colts if it wasn't for a special teams blunder in the fourth quarter. The Colts had that one all but in the bag, and they choked it away. They just don't know how to win. That's just how it works sometimes in the NFL. And the Jaguars came out of that one. They won, and then of course they struggled last week, and then they lose to Houston this week. CJ Stroud looks like a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence right now, which is weird because everyone thought Trevor Lawrence was the next coming of Christ and he was going to be, Peyton Manning after a year. And the talent's around him, right? He's got Evan Ingram, he's got Christian Kirk, he's got ETN, he's got Ridley now. He's going to be the alpha receiver. And Ridley had a number of drops in this game, and Lawrence missed a number of guys in this game. And then you hear the announcer saying, "Yeah, they want to get ETN the ball between 18 and 25 times this game." And that didn't work in the first half. They got shut out. It was 17-0 at halftime. So they come out in the second half and continue to do the same stuff. And I don't know what the deal is. Teams haven't had a problem getting after the passer against Houston. And this game, both teams, 0 sacks across the board. When you have Trayvon Walker, when you have Kayvon Chason, when you have Devin Lloyd, when you have Josh Allen, guys that are supposed to be able to get after the quarterback, guys that you spent draft capital on to get after the quarterback. The Jaguars are I don't want to say this in the same context, but I want to say they're as disappointing as the Bears coming into the season, right? Everyone thought the Bears were going to be so good. Fields is going to win MVP. I'm not saying they're as disappointing, but what I'm saying is like this is a flop. Like they literally should be 0-3 right now. They should have lost to the Colts in week 1. It's putrid what they're doing. There's no I don't know what the word is. There's no real consistency to what they're bringing to the table on offense, and on defense they can't really cause a stop. They can't really. I mean, CJ Stroud just walked down the field multiple times, just ching, 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 all the way down the field multiple times in this game, hit Nathaniel Dell multiple times deep. He made it look too easy. And, playing the NFL, and there's a lot of talent on that Jaguars defense that just is not doing their job point blank.
Mark, what's going on here? Because, I mean, just looking at the stats, it's not like Trevor Lawrence is getting sacked into oblivion either. I mean, I don't think they gave up a sack yesterday. It wasn't about protection. So what's going on in Duval County?
This is on Doug Peterson. This is 100% on Doug Peterson. His offense looks flat, and I love that they played Houston this week, and I love that Houston trounced them because that goes into and ties into who's calling plays for Houston, and that's Bobby Slowick, who is he hails from the Kyle Shanahan, Gary Kubiak coaching tree. So he brings this layered route tree, outside zone run scheme to Houston. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing him utilize Nico Collins in interesting ways. We're seeing him utilize Tank Dell in interesting ways. He is creating space for his players to go out there and succeed. I mean, why have we been so high on Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and these players in Kyle Shanahan's offense in San Francisco? Because he is putting them in places to succeed. And that is what Bobby Slowick is doing in Houston. And so I honestly love the fact that Houston came in here and upset the Jags, because it is night and day watching how these offenses are being run from a schematic standpoint, where basically Doug Peterson, and this is kind of goes against what we've seen in the past from Doug Peterson. He is being highly reliant on game environment to dictate his aggression and his pace. And that's something that carried forward from last year as well. You look at Trevor Lawrence's pass attempts in games where they were kind of allowed to just control and take things easy and win it in the fourth quarter. Trevor Lawrence was maxing out 28-32 pass attempts. In games where they were pushed were the games where he's thrown 44 times. The fact that Doug Peterson offense continues to remain so static, and he's basically, if you break things down to like the meat and potatoes here, is he's basically just relying on the talent of his playmakers to win. And you can't be successful, or I guess that only goes so far in today's NFL game. Whereas a guy like Bobby Slowick is out there maximizing and trying to pull every ounce of talent and upside out of his players that he can. And so I didn't come out and say I expect Houston to win in Jacksonville, but I was very adamant last week that these two offenses are being run entirely different. And it was very, very cool to see Bobby Slowick's offense, and in particular Tank Dell. Micro matchup stuff aside, Nico Collins had the toughest one-on-one on paper matchup in this spot. So it kind of makes sense that Tank Dell was the one to succeed. But these two players are going to continue to be heavy pieces in this Houston offense. And yeah, I'm concerned about Jacksonville moving forward. And I think it all comes back to Doug Peterson.
Yeah. And before we switch to the other side for Houston, I will say ETN, it's not like he had a terrible game. I mean, he had over 100 total yards there, and he hasn't had a terrible season. But, Cody, to go back to your point about Calvin Ridley, I think he was supposed to be the alpha. Again, these leaps were all supposed to happen. Everything was supposed to happen. And then through 3 weeks, it just hasn't really happened. Doug Peterson, I don't know what to tell you, man. You can't run the Philly special every play, I guess. So they're going to need to figure it out. But, Cody, a shout out to you. I believe in your rankings, you had Stroud as a top 10 option this past weekend, or just outside of it. You were high on him.
I did. I had Stroud at quarterback 8 this week, and he finished, it looks like, as I can't see it now. I think he was quarterback 11 on the week.
So pretty good. I mean, for a guy that I don't know if a lot of fantasy teams are rolling Stroud out there to start, but in the past 2 weeks, you look at his lines, you look at his receivers. Nico Collins had the big game last weekend, Tank Dell this past weekend. I mean, this offense, if you were down on it, it seems like, at least from a passing perspective, it is producing dividends that you didn't think were going to happen maybe. But aside from that, I think the person that people thought was going to perform, Dameon Pierce, yeah, he hasn't really lived up to the expectations. So going forward, Cody, are you high? Are you buying this Texans offense?
I'm buying the Texas offense because of CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud looks efficient. He looks calm. He looks like he's in the moment. The moment's not too quick for him. Like, even watching this game, and I talked about this last week with Nico versus Michael Pittman on the field at the same time, and I was like, Nico just looks more in the moment, more calm. He looks more dynamic than Michael Pittman. And Michael Pittman's a really good wide receiver. Now you got this week, it's like Stroud playing against Lawrence, so every other drive you're seeing the opposite guy. And Stroud just looks more calm. He looks like he's got the offense under his belt. He looks he's more confident. I'm buying CJ Stroud. That's what I'm buying for this, and say, are you buying Houston? I'm buying Houston, but I'm buying it because of CJ Stroud, because he has this offense down to a T. And you talk about the run game. Yes, it was ineffective, but that's what I mentioned earlier. Like, Jacksonville couldn't get after the quarterback. Teams haven't had a problem getting pressures on the quarterback against Houston because their offensive line is so decimated right now. Like, that can be tied right along with the rushing game. And Dameon Pierce in space, he's looked good. It's just, sometimes it's tough. That you saw that up in Minnesota with Alexander Madison the last couple of weeks. Sometimes it's tough to get things going in the rushing game, but when you got a quarterback like Stroud that you can sit back and depend on, the whole thing just looks so much better.
And Mark, you mentioned Tank Dell, Nico Collins. Both of them have the potential, but week to week, we're not going to know who's going to show up and who's not. I mean, I guess you could look at the matchups, but are you picking one over the other for the rest of the season here?
Yeah, it's Nico Collins. I mean, he's the legitimate alpha as far as usage, as far as routes run rate. He was being treated as the alpha this week. I mean, you look at the PFF grades of the defenders in Jacksonville, and his particular one-on-one matchup was by far the hardest. And he was getting over the top help when Jacksonville was in zone. So it's Nico Collins, man. But Tank Dell is an above average complementary piece to that. And he is going to have these weeks where he performs at a high level.
All right. Well, I think I am. Look, I'll be honest. I didn't expect much from the Texans this year. Maybe I'm a square in that aspect, not one of the sharps, but I think it also. I talked about situation before with Mike McDaniel. We already talked about Doug Peterson, but I mean, D'Amico Ryans too, right? I mean, you get a guy like that who comes in and at least gets the team believing and working hard. I think we could say the same about Gannon in Arizona too. I mean, you have teams that, look, they might not look like much on paper, but if you got belief and you're fighting every play, a lot more with effort than you see from some other teams, you got a shot. All right. Well, here, look, we have a full autopsy of a team here with a viewer question. Safe says, my team is Kirk Cousins, Bijan, Gibbs, A.J. Brown, Godwin, Goddard, Stevenson. The bench is JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Sutton, Christian Kirk, Jordan Love, Laporta, Tank Dell, Kareem Hunt. 12-team, 1 flex, full PPR. Now, I know that's a lot of information. There's a lot of good names up there, but they're 0-3. And the first thing I can think of is looking at this team that's 0-3. Is it the running back situation? Is Gibbs underperforming here? Bijan, after 2 electric weeks, I mean, I thought we'd see a little more touchdown production through 3 weeks. I've been warning about this. So you look at this team, there are some names. I mean, Kirk Cousins is one of the best fantasy quarterbacks, just from the past few years, just chucking the ball around. So I actually look at this team and I feel pretty good. I'm not panicking. And I think Laporta might even have more upside here than Goddard on the bench. So you guys, Cody, we'll start here. You look at this team. What's the first swap you're making?
Well, Goddard just hasn't been playing good. Laporta's been a better tight end overall. At quarterback, you're Gucci, right? Kirk Cousins is the quarterback 1 right now in fantasy football, and Jordan Love has been playing well above expectation. A.J. Brown's had a couple disappointing games. Bijan and Gibbs, the talent is apparent at the running back position. I love having that duo just because of late season surging at the running back position, and Bijan's already bursted onto the scene. Everyone's pointing to Gibbs as like this, down thing, but you saw the receiving work last week with the 9 targets. Then you saw them completely lean into him in the running game this week. Almost touched 20 carries. And I think he's going to be fine. Like, I think once they get Montgomery back and they can continue to build kind of not a 50-50, but kind of just like a split, an efficiency split, kind of like you see out of Bijan and Algier, or even down there, not obviously on the same par with H.N. and Mostert last week, but kind of like that same kind of idea where it's just building efficiency off of each other. That's only going to help the Gibbs situation. Godwin, I think, is just fine. I don't love Stevenson. But your bench is nice. JSN's going to be fine down the stretch. Sutton's had a couple games. Christian Kirk had a couple good games. Tank Dell, of course, is Tank Dell. Kareem Hunt sucks. But, I think your team's fine as far as the rest of the season looks. You just have to continue to – 0-3 is tough when you're looking at a roster with this talent on it, though.
Yeah, Mark, you see 0-3, right? And I think as fantasy owners, nobody likes to lose, and we all panic. You lose 1 game, you lose 2 games, you lose 3 games. But it's not like anybody is looking at this roster and be like, Kirk Cousins, bum, Bijan, bum, Gibbs, bum, A.J. Brown, bum. No, I mean, nobody's saying that. I think, look, I'm lower on Gibbs than Cody is because I just haven't seen it from Detroit yet. But look, you swap in Laporta. I'm, again, a gamble. You're going to bet A.J. Brown and Hurts figure it out. So, Mark, looking at this team, I don't know. If I had this team, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean, being 0-3 here, you're lacking consistent production. That's kind of what you expect when you're drafting A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. And notwithstanding the discussion on who Dallas Goedert is, he's utilized very infrequently in the red zone. And he's not a volume tight end, so he needs those touchdowns to provide weekly consistency. So for me, if I'm in the charge of this roster, I am utilizing name value and I'm making some deals. And so that starts with A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. You can say, whoa, they off to a slow start, but we cannot expect weekly consistency from those 2 guys on this offense. And yes, they're going to have those blow up weeks. They're going to have weeks where they're helping you win the week, but at 0-3, you don't really have the comfort of time. And you kind of make something happen right now. So I'm going out and trading for consistency. So I'm looking at players who are involved highly. I'm okay. Like on this roster, I would be okay. Like doing something. This is probably not going to be like an across the board statement, but on this particular roster sitting at 0-3, I'm looking and seeing if the Puka Nacua owner would like a late season upside piece like JSN. I'm utilizing the name value to go find consistency. And yes, like that consistency might not be there when Cooper Kupp comes back. They're not going to just like phase Puka out of the offense. So I'm going out and seeing what I can do to contribute to my weekly consistency. I think your running back room is fine. Bijan, Gibbs, and Stevenson, that's more than adequate. I'm looking to do so at the wide receiver and the tight end, and I'm trading Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown, potentially JSN, to kind of make that happen here.
Yeah, I think it being a full PPR, I mean, I think that helps Stevenson, right? I mean, he does a lot of his damage in the passing game, and I think there are enough pieces, even like a guy like Christian Kirk, who I don't know, spent about 15 minutes trashing Jacksonville. So yeah, Christian Kirk's great. But a guy like Christian Kirk who scored this past weekend and he had a big year last year, you could potentially, you could put together some packages here to go after. I like the Puka idea. I mean, even I think Jalen Waddle's going to be fine. If there's a Jalen Waddle owner out there who's a little concerned. So there's enough there to make some moves. It's just the 0-3 makes you panic. But, I mean, A.J. Brown might go out and have 3 touchdowns tonight, and you're like, oh, I'm good. I mean, it could happen just that quick. I'm pretty surprised that team is 0-3. Now, all right, speaking of records in the NFL and possibly being 0-3, we have some Monday night games tonight. Another doubleheader. I guess we'll call it the weekly money grab for Monday Night Football, right? They just, the more games, the more national games, the more eyeballs. So we'll start with the I guess the quote unquote early one. Eagles and the Bucks. We just talked about A.J. Brown a little bit, but the Bucks obviously are the surprise here. I'm not a big Baker Mayfield guy. Too inconsistent, I think, from performance to performance. But we've talked about Mike Evans before. So we have the Eagles and the Bucks. What are we thinking here? I mean, do the Bucks come back to earth here, or we got a game on our hands? Cody?
I think we got a good game. I think on the surface, everyone's going to run to Philadelphia. Currently, Philadelphia is favored by 5 in this game. I think when you're looking at across the board where the mismatch comes, and I think what keeps Tampa Bay in the game is I think they're going to be able to get the ball to Rachaad White, and I think that Godwin's going to have a game. Avonte Maddox is out, and Godwin hasn't really had that big burst. We've seen Mike Evans start the season really hot. I think Tampa Bay is going to stay in this game, and I know they beat 2 bad teams in Minnesota and Chicago. Minnesota's bad, but they're not as bad as Chicago. But I do think Tampa Bay makes this a good game. It's down there in Tampa, Monday night, a little bit of heat. Philadelphia comes down. They're not happy. I think they're going to push the ball to A.J. Brown early. So I think it's going to be a good game in general. But I guess if I'm going to target some people in this game for DFS tonight, I'm targeting Godwin. I like a little bit of Cade Otton as well at cost at value for DFS. But that's about it.
Mark, who do we like tonight? I want to get your thoughts on this. Do we see the same DeAndre Swift?
No.
We don't see the same DeAndre Swift, and also is Kenneth Gainwell still in play here? I mean, is he gonna? Do you think they're gonna get him back in there? He was the quote unquote starter at the beginning of the year.
I think it all starts with how both of these defenses are built. They're built from the front end back. So expect heavy pressure rates, and based on what the Eagles did this offseason with their defensive personnel, they went out and went after these pass rush linebackers, these edges, and you've seen it over the first 2 weeks of the season. That has left them extremely exposed over the middle of the field underneath the second level. So pass catching running backs, Rachaad White, tight ends, Cade Otton, guys who work the middle of the field like Chris Godwin. These are the guys that are likely going to exploit, or Tampa Bay is likely going to look to exploit this matchup, is over the middle of the field. So yeah, I like that call. I think Tampa sticks in this one. And I think the Eagles defense has a long way to go based off of the significant personnel turnover that they had this offseason.
You guys both mentioned Cade Otton, and I just want to bring this up. Hawkinson last week, 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hunter Henry the week before, 56 and 1 touchdown. I don't know what Otton's anytime touchdown is tonight, but I will probably take a good long hard look at it, and he'll probably be in any DFS I run tonight too. The Eagles cannot stop the tight end. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that the Eagles are going to come out and lose by any means, but I like the Cade Otton pick. I like the Monday Night Football under the lights. Everybody's doubting us. Oh yeah, by the way, we just had Tom Brady leave, so it's not like the Bucks are. Baker Mayfield is supposed to suck and all that. I like the narrative. I hope it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a good game. But then again, if I hope springs eternal for A.J. Brown, 3 touchdowns for us A.J. Brown owners. So we'll see how that one plays out. The other game, a little more tricky, I think, because We don't know if Joe Burrow is going to play tonight. We have the Rams and the Bengals. The Bengals in danger of going 0-3 against a Rams team again with Puka, the godsend that Puka is, and the resurgent Rams and Kyron Williams and maybe some performers that people didn't think LA would have this year. So we look at the Rams at the Bengals. Do we see an 0-3 Bengals team, or do they right the ship, Cody?
I'm scared of this one. I think even with Burrow, it's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, if we're not considering Sean McVay right now for, I know they're 1-1. The season is just 2 weeks, two and a half weeks fresh for coach of the year. Like Sean McVay, what he did is to bring this roster into the season, beat Seattle in Seattle, play San Francisco to a touchdown football game, and we know how good San Francisco is. And now they go into Cincinnati. Even if Burrow plays or doesn't play, I think the Rams are going to be in this game through the entirety. I want to know what this team is, and I think the next 3 weeks is going to tell us. Another game against the Bengals if Joe Burrow plays, Colts next week, and then Philadelphia. Then we're going to really know, because this defense coming in was like Aaron Donald and who? And that was it. So I'm excited to watch this one kind of unfold. Just sit back and watch. I don't really have any horses in the race. I think I want to see if Puka can continue on his dominance. I want to see if they can get Tyler Higbee more involved. And will Kyron Williams continue on his torrid opportunity share?
Mark, I think about the Bengals offense. Obviously, we have the wonky calf with Joe Burrow, but it can't go on like this for Jamar Chase, right? I mean, if not tonight, then when? If Burrow is playing, like, it just cannot go on like this, or can it?
I think regardless of Joe Burrow's status tonight, they need to feature Jamar Chase and get him going if they want to turn their season around. And I think it starts tonight. On the other side of that game, Sean McVay versus Lou Anarumo, the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams and the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. This is going to be a chess match, like on the Magnus Carlsen scale. Like this is must-see football. When you get an offensive mind like Sean McVay and a defensive mind like Lou Anarumo, this is going to be a battle for the ages, honestly. And I'm really excited about that aspect of this game. And I think regardless if Jake Browning is behind center or under center, or if it's Joe Burrow, you're going to see Jamar Chase featured early and often. The Los Angeles Rams, they have a defensive scheme that is overplaying the talent, obviously, that they have on the defensive side of the ball. And we have a guy like Jamar Chase that can just win on every level and can take a 5-yard slant, 80 yards to the house. You have to get him going. And I think it starts with early completions, and they start to build off of that early.
I think it's kind of gone under the radar because, again, you talk about the expectations for the Rams, but what Sean McVay has been able to do. Stafford has looked good. I went over 300 yards in both games, needed to against the 49ers. I guess you could argue that, but he has looked good. I haven't checked the weather in Cincinnati, but as long as it's not some Noah's Ark type rainstorm that they had week 1 with Cleveland, I think we're in for points tonight in that game. I just based on sheer will with the Rams offense clicking, and I think Cincinnati's going to want to start clicking. This is where it blows up in my face, and it's like a 17-13. But I'm gonna go with points. I'm gonna go with the over tonight in that game. Go a little out on a limb, but I like what I've seen from LA, and I'm going to bet that Cincinnati gets on track. Watch and learn from a 6-3 field goal fest tonight, and never take my advice. All right, that wraps it up for week 3, guys. Pretty good week, but I think the NFL's best weeks are ahead. I think we have so many 70-point games in our future. I think we're going to see it often this year. Guys, great talking to you. Great expertise. You guys are much smarter than me. You prove it every week, and we'll see you after week 4. For everyone else, thank you for the questions. I hope you're winning your fantasy matchups, and if you're not, then you should start listening to us at Sportstopia. We're going to help you do it. We'll see you after week 4.